And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Hi there, I'm National Weather Service Meteorologist Peter Chan, and this is your Alaska Marine Weather Outlook on this Saturday, March 8th, 2025. This outlook will be for Sunday and Monday. We start with the state of the sea ice. Ice is extensive across the northern half of the Bering Sea, especially along the west coast up through the Bering Strait, but we are going to have some wind action that could shift this around a bit. Some stronger winds coming across the Aleutians right now with a low pressure system. We'll tend to have more of an offshore flow out of Norton Sound and along the lower Yukon coast. As a little milder air comes up from the south and southwest, we do expect daytime temperatures to get back up around and above freezing here across the southwest interior as we go through Sunday. Also, warmer air will be coming up through Cook Inlet, so we're looking at temperatures Sunday and Monday up around or just above 40 degrees in some locations, so very little, if any, ice left around areas of Bristol Bay and up through the upper portion of Cook Inlet as this relatively mild pattern has persisted for some time. We are going to see a little cooler temperatures as we head through mid-March, at least compared to the seasonable norms, but nevertheless, no really super cold air or no really warm air either anticipated. There's an area of low pressure out here along the lower Gulf, North Pacific, eastern part of the Gulf on late tonight, early Sunday morning. This feature is going to wash out and then just kind of pivot as a front. That'll keep some instability, scattered rain, snow showers going along areas of the Gulf Coast into the Panhandle for Sunday. Back to the west, stronger low will continue to fill Sunday into Monday as it works its way eastward across the central Bering to just north of St. Paul come Monday afternoon. But here it is Sunday afternoon, a little trough lingering here across the Panhandle that could keep a few instability showers going. Can't even rule out a rumble of thunder in southern parts of the Panhandle. Back to the west, secondary low development along this occluded front will be passing up along the east side of Kodiak Island and then kind of sitting and spinning here over the western Gulf for early in the week. And then that stronger low out over the central Bering will continue eastward and begin to fill so that by the time we get into Monday afternoon, we anticipate low center up above 980 millibars north of St. Paul. And then the secondary low just kind of sitting here in the western Gulf with this occluded front pushing up against the Panhandle, and eventually that feature will just weaken to more of a trough as we get into Tuesday, but it'll still keep some instability going along areas of the Gulf Coast that'll keep some scattered showers going. For Sunday, for Lynn Canal, we're looking at northeast winds 15 knots, waves 2-3 feet. For middle and southern portions of the Panhandle, we're looking at Stevens Passage, south winds 20 knots, waves up to 4 feet. Southeast winds to 20 knots, 6 to 8 foot waves here down in Dixon Entrance. For the outer coast, south of Sitka, south-southwest winds there off of Craig with waves 10, 11 feet. Off of Sitka, southeast winds to 20 knots, maybe easterly winds of 25 knots out of the icy Strait region. And then back up to 20-knot easterly winds there, Cape Suckling, waves 7, 8 feet. For Monday, for the inner channels, northeast winds still 15 knots there within Lynn Canal with waves 2-3 feet. Northeast winds to 20 knots, Stevens Passage, 3-4 foot waves. And then down here, Dixon Entrance around Ketchikan, Metlakatla there. Southeast winds to 30 knots, 8-9 foot waves. And for the outer coast, we could have westerly winds there near Craig and Prince of Wales Island with waves as high as 8-9 feet. And then as we go up the coast, look for southeast to east winds, Sitka on up through off the icy Strait there at 30 knots, 8 to 9 foot waves, and then easterly winds 20 to 25 knots from outside of Yakutat Bay to Cape Suckling with 8-9 foot waves continuing. And for the northwestern Gulf, Prince William Sound on Sunday, east winds 25 knots, 6 foot waves. Outside of Hinchinbrook Entrance to Kayak Island, east-southeast winds 25 knots, 7 to 8 foot waves. Coming down Cook Inlet, upper to middle Cook Inlet, northeast winds 20 to 25 knots, but there at the Kennedy Entrance there to Cook Inlet, southeast winds to 30 knots, waves 8 to 9 feet. On Monday, northeast winds to 25 knots with 4 foot waves within the wide air expanse there of Prince William Sound. Easterly winds 25 to 30 knots outside of Hinchinbrook Entrance back toward Kayak Island. And then as we go down Cook Inlet northeast to northerly winds 25 knots, 5 to 7 foot waves there off of Anchor Point, and then northwest winds to 30 knots there across the entrance of Cook Inlet with waves up to 7 feet. For Sunday, Kodiak Island will see winds out of the east-southeast 25 to 30 knots. We're going to have a secondary low taking shape and then lifting along the east side of the island. In the wake of that low, southwest to west winds 25 to 30 knots extending down along the panhandle, or along the peninsula rather, with waves as high as 13, 14 feet either side there at Cold Bay and False Pass. For Monday, look for westerly winds in the vicinity of Kodiak Island, 25 to 30 knots. West-southwest winds, generally west winds on the North Pacific side as high as 30 knots there off of False Pass. But on the north, or the Bering side from Bristol Bay down to Cold Bay, 20-knot winds increasing southwesterly there upwards of 30 knots just north of Cold Bay, as there's going to be a little stronger wind and wave action coming in from the west. Because in the Aleutians, it's going to be windy. We have Sunday gale force winds, southwesterly gale force winds of 40 to 45 knots for the eastern and central Aleutians. As we get near and west of Adak through Kiska and Shemya, we're looking at southwest to west storm force winds of 50 to 55 knots, and you can see those high seas on the order of 25 to 30 feet, especially south of the Aleutian chain and then further north of it. And then on Monday, still gale force winds, generally westerly gale force winds across the Aleutian chain, 40 to 45 knots, with some of the higher waves shifting on over to north of Nikolsky and Unalaska on the order of 20 to 25 feet. And along the southwest coast, so we have that front that's going to be pushing in to Bristol, Kuskokwim Bays, Nunavik Island tonight. With a burst of snow and wind, we have that winter weather advisory in effect for this region, the northern peninsula on up through Bristol Bay, Kuskokwim Bay, a bit inland, lower Yukon Delta to all the way up to St. Lawrence. On Sunday, southwest to south winds 20 knots into Kuskokwim and Bristol Bays, bringing temperatures back up into the mid-30s above freezing. Still easterly winds 25 to 30 knots out of Norton Sound and along the lower Yukon Delta. So this area here, blowing snow, a little colder temperatures. To the south, southwesterly gales 35 knots, Pribilov Islands around St. Paul. Southeast gales 35 knots in the vicinity of St. Matthew. And then on Monday, we have southwest winds 15 knots there in Bristol Bay, east winds 15 knots within Kuskokwim Bay, but gales of southwesterly gales 40 knots on the Pribilovs with waves upwards of 24, 25 feet. We have that low center passing north of St. Paul on Monday. So easterly offshore flow out of Norton Sound and the lower Yukon coast, right around 20 knots. Looking at the Bering Strait and north side of St. Lawrence, northeasterly winds 25 knots as high as 35 knots on the west end of St. Lawrence Island in the vicinity of Gamble. As we go up along the Chukchi Sea coast and then into the Beaufort Sea, highest winds will be out toward Kaktovik, up to 40-knot easterly winds could cause some blowing snow along that area, especially Point Thompson, Kaktovik. And then on Monday, still 35-knot easterly winds around Kaktovik, so there still could be some areas of blowing snow there along the coast. Winds fall off, though, to 5 to 10 knots out of the southeast to east toward Utqiagvik, and then dropping down through the lower Chukchi Sea, we're looking at northeasterly winds right around 20 knots passing through the Bering Strait. And again, highest winds up to 35 knots from the northeast will be along the north side of St. Lawrence Island, especially in the vicinity of Gamble on Monday.